Good morning to you, my friends, wherever you may be in the world today. Alan Clements here from Santa Monica, California, United States. Today, May 11th, 2021. If my dad were alive today, he would have been 100 years old. He prayed and did all that he could to imagine that. He passed away in 2017 at 96, along with my mom at 96 years old. Today, a continuation of my series of talks based upon my newly released book, Extinction X-Rated. This is the Dhamma essence of that book, buried in it, in the novel. And it's a continuation from yesterday's talk to the children, to my daughter, to all of us, to me. World Dharma, or World Dhamma Literacy. I want to talk more about that and make it a little bit more clear to myself, especially wanting to embody more intimately the intimacy of being on my terms. And the subtitle is, now more than ever in this era of authoritarianism and mind control, propaganda, disinformation, misinformation, information laundering, the term applies here, of taking something illicit as misinformation and normalizing it through repetition and the various ways in which money is laundered, the same thing with ideas or information, to create legitimacy with something that is illegal, wrong, a lie. For example, the terrorist organization formerly known as the Thamada in Burma, run by the terrorist general, former general Ming Aung Hlaing and his state administration council. He's information laundering legitimacy to the world community, to ASEAN, to people, playing on the psychology of collusion and complicity. There's something beneath one's declaration of decency where profit, greed, privilege are the subconscious motive. And so information laundering here plays into that collusion, that complicity. Dhamma literacy in an era of authoritarianism, misinformation, information laundering, propaganda, mind control. Hey, you, leave those kids alone. A line from Pink Floyd's famous song, Another Brick in the Wall. Hey, leave those kids alone. We don't need your mind control. It applies to all of us. Welcome today. Nice to see you wherever you may be sitting. What is world Dhamma literacy in essence? Again, pointing to the obvious, me, my own personal feeling for this in a completely extemporaneous manner. It's found in the Buddhist Pali word, primarily bhavana, mind control on the terms of one's own right view, one's own mindfulness, one's own insight, one's own wisdom about something that is uniquely defined by right here and now. Sound has the capacity to reverberate intonations upon the ear. We hear it. We see color. We smell odors. We taste taste. There's a unique characteristic to each of these phenomena at the senses. Thought is thought. Then there's the content of thought. Dhamma literacy knows the thought for what it is, a thought of love, a thought of compassion, a thought of judgment. There's a literacy to that tonality, to that etymology. to that definition. One knows it. One is in a felt reality relationship with the phenomena. Thought as thought rather than in the ideation stream simply of the thought. Being so-called one with the blame, the righteousness, the judgment. That would be called the delusional relationship to phenomena. That thought is me, that thought is true, that thought is real. And it could be satanic, as it is in Burma today, with the terrorist organization Mossack terrorizing the people. There is the belief that one is doing what is right. That is a deluded thought stream. It's the opposite of Dhamma literacy or world Dharma literacy. The capacity of the human being, you and me, to make a conscious choice to live in cool, to live in poise, to live in choice, to know what to do, when to do it, how to do it, when to cease it, how to cease it, and to move through into the next. A conscious, deliberate engagement, if it's an appropriate thing to engage, and equally a discerning insight into the inappropriateness of hitting, screaming, yelling, stealing, pillaging, terrorizing, reclaiming ethical intelligence, reclaiming spiritual intelligence. A slippage of the mind through Dhamma literacy knows, my dignity, hear me, my dignity is based upon my Dhamma literacy, my ethical intelligence, my mindful intelligence, my spiritual intelligence. These are very intimately understood words, and it would take time to explain them, but allow me here in this sharing today to talk more and more extemporaneously about Dhamma literacy. If there's notes in this that appeal to you, of course, take them, or listen to this over and over again until it becomes more and more integral to the anatomy of our own consciousness. So Dhamma literacy, world Dharma literacy. Choice making to discern what is right, what is good, what is beautiful. Choice making to overcome what is denigrating, what is wrong to self and other, and what no longer needs to be promoted as correct thought, speech, and action. One learns from one's life. That's a very crucial term for me, learning from one's life. So self-accountability could be seen as an attribute of world Dharma literacy. Number one here, Dhamma literacy is the capacity to embody, which I've been using for a felt, experiential based living. The difference between the concept of eating and the ability to eat mindfully and to feel the nutritional strength of that food and that drink, to vitalize the anatomical nature of the mind, to perceive, to see, to hear, to taste, to touch, to think, to emote, to act, to engage. That process of felt reality. A huge distinction between that which is direct experience and that which is assumed to be direct experience. Many people live in the ideation of something, the conceptualization of something, and often miss the point. Many people live in the futuristic denial of present time phenomena. For example, drinking, eating. We could easily eat out of habit, drink out of habit, smoke out of habit, talk out of habit. And in that process, we're in denial of the phenomenology of present time reality. And we lose relationship to drinking, eating, smoking, talking, loving, sitting. Next thing you know, you've overeaten yet again, over drunk yet again, over smoked, over talked, over behaved, missing the reality of mindfully engaging the food and the drink to appropriate, suitable levels of health, of stamina, of energy. Pause. Dhamma literacy is a felt relationship not just to the intake or the outtake of thought, speech, and action, but skillfulness in terms of the physics of energy. When I eat or when I drink, I like to feel that what I'm doing, ingesting, drinking, is intimately related to the fidelity of an energy field. Does the food give me energy? Does the drink give me energy? And have the capacity to stop when the energy is being diminished, so that one isn't living and eating and drinking based upon sensations of how stretched the abdomen is, how so-called intoxicated the mind may be. So energy. So Dharma literacy here is a very intimate relationship to the field of cognitive, psychological, spiritual, and biological energy. How to study that. One of the great ways to become more intimate with energy is to sensitize. I know when we fast, one becomes immeasurably sensitive to the body, to sound. The same thing with doing yoga, the relaxation into a more heightened mindful awareness of body, of muscles, of tonality, of stretch, of movement, of awareness, of authenticity to a movement, to the felt energetic reality of one's own body. Becoming more beautiful is a definition of bhavana, the bhavanification of consciousness, the beautification of the mind. A set of sequences here to point to the kind of architecture of what I mean by Dhamma literacy. 2 forms of meditation to embody Dhamma literacy. Mindfulness of one's interiority, physical sensations, tension, pain, coolness, vibration, heat, temperature, fluctuations, the sensitizing of a mindful awareness of the different sensations within one's own body. It's one thing to do an asana within the yoga world. It's another thing to do an asana with mindful awareness of the changing physical sensation as one learns to align skillfully, not to harm oneself, with asana movement. Physical awareness of the sensations and a mental fidelity to the appropriateness of how you're actually moving the arm, the back, the neck, and so on. A dual function. Now, within this awareness of interiority, we're aware of the senses: seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking. What a joy it is to know that every thought that arises in the mind does not necessarily in any way, shape, or form, or based on content or repetition, need to be believed, considered to be true, indicative of self-identity, or of an intuitive flash of insight, to be trusted, not trusted, and to deeply know I can choose to engage, or I can release and allow the thought to evaporate. Choice making to the phenomenology at the senses. When I see you, when I hear you, when I see me, when I hear me, when I feel you, when I feel me. Taste, smell, thought. A mindful presence that sees but does not necessarily need to keep. Touch and go mindfully in easy flow. Touch and go, seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, thinking, feeling. Mindfully touch and go, and easy in the free flow of phenomena. Another way to simply remember the beauty of bhavana, which is the way to inhabit and to evolve world Dhamma literacy. The second form of meditation, contextual. Human beings, life, always in contexts, inside and what appears to be external to oneself. We see things, we taste things, we imagine things. We see the world through the six senses, and the mind being the sixth sense. We're in context, we're contextual creatures. Everything is an interrelated set of causal conditions. Nothing, as we can state over and over again, but so difficult to really embody the causal, interrelated, dependently arising nature of all phenomena, inside and outside. And to have a Dhamma literate, mindful relationship to this contextual circumstance of life is to be present with the phenomena of the inside, interiority, with whatever appears outside. So that when we meet someone, hear something, taste something, encounter something, driving, moving, reclining, traveling, moving, a crisis in the news, whatever it may be, in our home, in the hospital, on the beach, in memory, everything is in a contextual causal flow. Dhamma literacy, what does it mean? To mindfully know that I can inhabit the phenomenology of inside as it appears to meet the outside, and right there implement conscious, I can't emphasize enough for myself, conscious, mindfully intelligent, discerning choice making. How easy it is to live in the conditioned fusion with inside and outside, often living in unrecognized fidelity to conditions inside from historical history in the past, brought to the present, and we're reliving the past in the so-called present, behaving in ways that are just replicas of the past and assuming that it's in the present. And so we live in these self-reoccurring feedback loops that brings the past into the pseudo-present, but all we're doing is walking into the future in conditioned backwards behavior, living our past always in the present. Very few people can break the habit of so-called eating disorders, drinking disorders. They move into addictions because there's no real awareness of the interface of the past with a conscious, deliberate, mindful, literate insertion of a greater degree of mindfulness here and now. I refuse to believe the sensation of joy snorting that line of cocaine or that whiskey or that morsel of food or that nicotine or that vape or that whatever it is. You can be totally addicted to low dosing. You could be totally addicted to in-breath, out-breath. How many nuns and monks and meditators have I seen who are spiritually addicted to meditation, the form of meditation, over the fidelity of the freedom through being present, to the phenomena of interiority as it meets exteriority. A couple of points. 2 dimensions of meditation, 6 sense doors, 6 sense phenomena. A key thing is to know the 3 streams of life experience. Thought. Boy, those who know their thought and know the content of their thought and know what thoughts to evolve and to keep, and to know how to see that a thought and definition within thought, words themselves, are mosaics. They're organic, living, breathing entities that are infused more with the creative aesthetic of a re-emerging, a deepening definition. Freedom on one day to an 8-year-old is freedom very differently to a 15-year-old, to a 30-year-old, until one calcifies in their denial of freedom and lives in the addiction of historical relationships to whatever you want to call it. People die and calcify and falsify as they grow older. rather than liberate and elevate. So the essence of this Dharma literacy is about freedom. Freedom of thought, freedom of speech, freedom of mind, and how in fidelity are we to keep alive the freedom within one's own mind and to protect and be responsible to the freedom of others and the preservation of life on the planet and in the cosmos. So the three streams, pause, speech, thought, and action. What does it mean to be world Dharma literate with these three streams? An extemporaneous discourse attributed to the Buddha, to his son. A rave to the children, hey, leave those kids alone. In this time of authoritarianism, how to discern information laundering, how to discern totalitarianism in its disguises, in its costumes, in its perfumes, in its odors, the seductions within the structures that are being played out by media corporations and Wall Street-based corporations and oligarchical, technological, technocratic deviants around the world and in Silicon Valley and the various citadels of power within capitals in different countries, the manipulation for mind. And we hear it so much today with vaccinations, with the Wuhan labs, the denial of the bioweapons program and gain of research and gain of function funded by the Americans and the prophet Dr. Fauci. All these things, it's like, why isn't this being discussed? And why wasn't this brought up? And why wasn't Mr. Fauci held accountable to the millions of dollars funneled into this bioweapons lab in Wuhan? Alan, are you conspiratorial? No. Look at all these things that go down as, well, facts with receipts out there, but mainstream media, alternative media, pundits of lies, the information laundering, mind control, Dhamma literacy in the time of totalitarianism, now more than ever. Hey, leave those kids alone. We must embody the tenacity beyond religion of what it means to be in fidelity to your own three streams of thought, speech, and action. The Buddha talking to his son, Rahula. He said, use your mind like a mirror, an organic mirror that feels reality rightly. When you think, Rahula, and you know, and you know in your heart, I mean, way down in, deep in your heart, you've learned the taste of this state of consciousness, that thought is aberrant to your well-being, that it's a toxic thought, mild as it may be. It's a thought of greed, of anger, of ignorance, and all the various synonyms, antonyms, everything that has to do with the constellation of those three kilesa, greed, anger, and delusion. Rahula, when you have sufficiently used your mindful intelligence like an intimate mirror that feels and smells and tastes the motivation, the chaitana of that state of consciousness that's associated with thinking, and you see and you know it not to be efficacious to love, compassion, beauty, and safety and freedom for yourself and others, Rahula, Dhamma literacy here, my son, means abandon. Learn the fine art of release of that thought. I don't know about you, but I know when I get up at night and I'm awake and I'm lying in meditative prone position, I'm very able to see my own mind as kaleidoscopic, as phenomena arising from the primordial nature of wherever this stuff is coming from. And when a thought comes, it dissolves into the thin air of wherever it came from. I have no interest in participating in the thought stream. In-breath, out-breath, relaxing deeply into that mysterious, cool, calm, oceanic peace of interiority. Resting, abiding, and taking even my own identity of Alan meditating from that. I am not lying in that infinite cognitive pool of emptiness. And that too, self-identity. Neither wish to live nor fear death. Taking the I out of dying. And the Buddha is talking to his son Rahula when you see that thought, when you're having it, after you've completed it, very key point, mindfulness as reflection on the quality of the thought, the motivation of the thought, the efficacy of the thought. So 3 streams, thinking, speaking, and acting, in 3 different dimensions to each of the 3 streams. Before the thought, during the thought, after the thought. Training your mind to feel before we think, is it the right energy? Is it truthful? Is the timing appropriate? Will the words be suitable? Will my tone reflect my commitment to compassion, to loving kindness, to honesty? And can I liberate myself from the need for a particular outcome and trust in the purity and the fidelity that truth has its own wisdom? It will find its own place. The thought arises. Reflective, mindful, organic, felt mirroring of all of those qualities within the thought. It's a thought of judgment and blame. A thought of greed. Just, they're natural, they arise. A thought of self-diminishment. How many times in the last month I have felt at different moments thoughts of, oh my God, fear, panicked, shocked. And to know that we have that fine Dharma art, that literacy, the mind training, the bhavana of mind and being, to know that we can empower choice making consciously on what increases stature. How many people I've met in Burma over the decades who've languished, so to speak, in prisons, in gulags, who are tortured, who refused to give over their dignity. They had mindful intelligence to know nobody can control, take, sully, diminish my own self-worth, my own dignity, my own stature. You can take everything from me. You could probably even peel the skin from my body. Crush my bones, yes. Take my mind. But you can't take my dignity, my freedom. That's Burma today. That's you today. That's me today with Dharma literacy, abiding deep in conscience. I wish I could have heard that word so many years ago. What does it mean to live in a felt, mindful relationship with conscience, with conscientious, mindful choice, with discernment, with inquiry, with ethical choice-making consideration on the appropriateness of doing or not doing. So many things in life could be done, should be done, and we don't inhabit the action required to understand the compassion needed to stay with it, to give that loving thought, to give that donation, to stand in fidelity to the people of Myanmar today in their fight for democracy. The world community has clearly failed in their mindful relationship to conscience. Illiterate, from my humble opinion, when you understand the appropriateness of compassion and loving kindness as an action that fulfills the deed to actually protect and enhance the freedom and the safety and the peace and the security of others, especially when crimes against humanity are being enacted against them every minute of the day through a deliberate propaganda information laundering campaign worldwide with the collusion of other governments and media sources based upon the terrorist group in Burma. Hitler did it in the evolution of the Third Reich. America did it trying to sell the war in Vietnam to the people. Iraq, it was a lie. Selling lies to the people. Information laundering, no mindful intelligence. Rahula, the Buddha talking to his son. When you know that what you're about to think is a lie, you know that what you're saying is a lie, you know that what you just said is a lie, Rahula, you got to study that lying is the most insulting thing that you can do to your own sense of worth and conscience and dignity. It leads nowhere other than through your own destruction, your own denigration. You've soiled your own conscience. Retrieve that. Make good on that promise. I would like to share with you my lie. Be accountable to that process. Not to mention a thought of hatred, a thought of greed that motivates thoughts to enact violence. All of what we see in the world today, in wars, especially in Burma today, a mind directed by a thought to persecute, one thought sustained, encased in the psychopathology of narcissism, fortified by other men and women with the same type of thought fields, and other men acting as if they are indoctrinated in a totalitarian Al-Qaeda-like extremism, killing family members, killing doctors, killing nurses, killing teachers, persecuting, raping, denigrating, stealing, all in the name of an unrecognized thought. When we think about Dhamma intelligence, Dharma literacy, world Dharma literacy, human life, animal life, natural life, the planet is at stake based upon illiterate people. You and me and people around the world. So these teachings, as I've inherited them and I understand them in my own life, are so crucial, not to the evolution of democracy and the preservation of human rights, but the sanctity of the future of life itself, all coming through thought and speech and action. And he told his son Rahula, the same Rahula with speech. Before you speak, while you're speaking, after you've spoken, and you know that that thought and that speech is mixed with greed, anger, coercion, propaganda, deception, violence, extortion, denigration, racism, xenophobia, apartheid, all the various ways in which human language has been devised to understand the ways in which consciousness, when unrecognized, persecutes and denigrates and violates both the natural world, the non-human world, and the human world, and the transhuman world, which is other deities in other dimensions simultaneous to the one that we and you and I coexist in right now. We have far-reaching influences beyond what we normally understand through ordinary perception. We're in multidimensional context, at least as I see it and feel it. So Dharma literacy here is a deep, deep call for a heightened decency and dignity and the preservation of one's own self-worth through the protection and the elevation of the worth and the dignity of others. Okay. I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this. The reason I use world Dharma and not Dhamma or Dharma literacy alone is I'm in a 25-year and ongoing deep quest to transcend fidelity to religion, to ideology. The world is the best that I can understand where I live. And literacy and intelligence are very trans-religious, trans-ethnic concepts that point to the direct experience of living in an embodied way in the context of the world. That context of the world, for me, allows me the best opportunity to transcend my own unrecognized apartheid, discrimination, whether it be location-based, people-based, or posture-based. How easy it was as nuns and monks and lay people in the monastery to assume that sitting meditation was a higher priority than being present meditation in all postures. One of the great things that drew me to the late Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw was he was a trans-postural yogi, a world Dhamma yogi, an individual who, as I understood it, who embodied the power of mindful intelligence through an awareness of the inherent physical sensations in the body. When one moved one's arm, the awareness of the physical sensations of movement, such a gift to live in that level of immediate simplicity and elegance. It took speed and habit and addiction out of my life to a large part. When turning my head, to inhabit the intention to turn gave me much more nuanced control and intimacy over the movements of my day-to-day yogic asana. It took it off the mat, threw the mat out, and brought the mat out only when I wanted to use yoga on the mat. Yoga and meditation were in the world. All postures, all times, all context, all degrees of challenge and crises, both inside and outside. One doesn't do anything other than keep alive esteem, stature, discernment, insight, and a trans-practice relationship that enjoys the freedom to be in one's chosen states of mind. Choosing one's states of mind. That was the essence of what I learned from the Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw. Among many things, trans-postural, translocation. All of his earliest teachings prior to monasteries in Burma or meditation centers were encouraging the people of Myanmar, be alive to the wisdom of the Rahula Sutta, thinking, speaking, and acting, mindfully inhabiting the Vipassana practice in all postures, whatever you're doing, cooking, bathing, tending to the fields, even drinking or smoking, whatever you did, do it with the fidelity of present time awareness to the actual sensations and the mind states, and increase your bhavana, your mind control, your mind training, learning how to overcome self-denigrating states of mind, learning how to inhabit positive and beautiful states of mind, knowing how to mix beautiful states of mind into very intimately self-creative, unique configurations of states of mind, knowing how to inhabit movement, posture, bending, lying, standing, walking, eating, drinking, reclining, lying down, sleeping, breathing, living, dying, being reborn. Simplicity. Knowing that we can choose silence, but not necessarily think that I am now silent. Even that idea is seen as anicca, causal, empty of self-fixation. The practice of awe as silence and as wonderment, co-creating states of mind, choosing one's own magic despite the cultural propaganda. Oh, you have been diagnosed with a fatal illness. Namaste. Oh, I look in the mirror and I am no longer youthful and beautiful. Namaste. It's a big I love you, fuck you to propaganda, to the information launderers, to the totalitarians, to the authoritarians, to the mind manufacturers to want to make life and people and the kids puppets, to be controlled, to be serfs, and to be slaves. It's like, hey, leave those kids alone. It's all becoming so much more clear, isn't it? We determine our fate within the context of this epic circumstance called life, cosmos, and samsara. The fidelity to choice, so crucial. Am I choosing my state of mind? Yes, I'm conditioned by biological impulses, by heartbeat and by heartbeat pressure, blood pressure, by cholesterol. I'm doing all that I possibly can to understand the fidelity of nutrient and drink and air. But if I place my entirety and my worth into those biological, so-called natural things that we can do with semi-control, the next thing you know, oh my God, look at all the healthy people all over the world, the most miraculous breatharians. Oh, what happened to Carol? Pancreatic cancer. God damn. Must have been all that candy when she was like in embryo from her mother. There's no way to attribute old age, disease, death to these factors. Don't place your mindful worth and your esteem in the body. Take care of it, but it's not a temple. It is simply a vehicle. It is the cloak, the biological wrapping. In breath, out breath. Do not attach to me. Care for me like home. But I will die. I will surprise you. In an instant, heart attacks happen, strokes happen, blood clots happen. on and on and on. If you're attached to longevity, it'll be a cruel demise. But if we're attached to the wisdom of mind training and to release into that fidelity of the artistry and the aesthetics of your own emotional intelligence, your own spiritual intelligence. And hey, children, ask mom and dad, ask teachers, hey, teacher, hey, mom and dad, teach me emotional intelligence, teach me mindful intelligence, show me how you've overcome self-deception. The new mantra with students and teachers, hey, Mr. Guru, hey, Mrs. Guru, do you lie? How do you lie to yourself? Have you really overcome self-deception? Would you be humble enough to me, Guruji, to talk to me about the ways in which you've understood how you've lived in the cul-de-sac of self-deception? What is your own propaganda? Why do you call yourself a teacher? Does that mean you're like really enlightened? What does enlightenment really mean to you? Asking questions is the hallmark of world Dharma literacy. We must keep alive the question, as Elie Wiesel said, the great Nobel laureate. There are no absolute answers. Stay away from those who espouse absolute answers. Keep alive the elegance of the question. If only the brown shirts empowered the question. If only the leftist Democrats would empower the question. If we would only empower where we're in collusion with totalitarianism and denial and persecution and racism and xenophobia and the denial of our role to protect the freedom of others. United Nations, shame on you, Security Council. You're called the Delusional Council. Xi Jinping, delusional, genocidal, nuclear armed, bioweapons, totalitarian zealot. Let's call out the totalitarians, the propagandists, the information launderers. The receipts are there. We're dealing with a bioweapon that was delivered into a lab through what's known as gain of function to increase its lethality. And guess what? It's been very effective. And there's probably going to be many more of these things. Welcome aboard. We've got to really control our minds and fight back against the totalitarians right now. It's not just mindful intelligence and literacy for our own peace of mind. Anyway, I can go on and on. Hey, leave those kids alone. So let me come to a conclusion here, perhaps tomorrow, if I'm able to continue with this talk. Dharma literacy, recapping some of the points. We're embodied. Be aware of the sensations of the body. Be aware of the senses. Know the distinction between the ideation of something and the direct phenomena. There is something so beautiful that when one eats and drinks, one isn't only eating tofu and broccoli and asparagus and drinking verified wine. One is actually tasting the sensations on the tongue, watching that impulsion to want to repeat, swallow, fill, overeat, overdrink, oversmoke, overtalk, overlive, overinflate. Mindful intelligence allows us to live in great discernment of the propaganda of conceptualization. So be very careful to see the distinction between the direct, intimate phenomena of something. And maybe tomorrow I'll speak more specifically to what is eating meditation? What is it real? What is sitting meditation? What is talking meditation? What is listening meditation? These were all things that we learned in a monastery that continue to flower for those of us in the world who continue to practice them. The 6 senses, inside and outside. The 5 postures. Dharma literacy and meditation and yoga are embodied in standing, in walking, in lying down, in being prone, bathing, washing. I mean, when one really drops in, I say this with humility, to truly, it's not meditation off the cushion or out of the meditation hall. I almost want to say, I won't say it. It's like it's so the other way around. Yoga is a way of life, and there are mats, if you can afford one and want to destroy the world with plastics, you can buy one. But meditation and zafus, that's the selling of the retreat environment, the commercialization of the event, and the heightened propaganda of the posture in the studio, in the center. It's completely the opposite. Dhamma as a way of living, yoga as a way of living. It is the way of living consciously if we break the trance of apartheid to posture and to location. That's a crucial thing. Oh, I'm going to meditate today, just even 30 seconds. Train oneself, I think and speak and move all day long. What does it mean to occupy thought, speech, and action in all postures as much as possible? Learn to locate mindful presence inside the body. When I walk, move, stand, recline, learn how to retrieve it through the senses and bring it back to feeling oneself inside one's body, the sensations of one's body. I'll give you an example. About 3 or 4 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, I stopped the notion of going to bed at night. I still sleep, of course. We all do. But rather than when I go to bed, rather than going to sleep, I go into what I call reclining meditation. And I place my hands on my heart, and I simply lie at a 45-degree angle, and I consciously breathe slowly, and I inhabit the body, not with the desire to sleep, but the desire to sharpen and accentuate both mindfulness and samvega, which is the intimate, wakeful urgency to be more and more present with the phenomena of being where you are. And in-breath, out-breath. Obviously you sleep. But whatever posture I try to remember throughout the night, it's not that I'm awake anymore. It's a conscious opportunity to inhabit a greater fidelity to inhabiting my posture on the basis of the sensations. And when I need to, simply regulate the breathing, in-breath, out-breath, in-breath, out-breath, in-breath. And it's a peaceful, no matter how little or much you sleep, there's something very stature-inducing and evolving about turning the event of sleeping into a meditative opportunity. The same thing with eating, the same thing, I have a glass of wine in the evening. Sometimes I'll be reading, sometimes I'll be writing, sometimes I am talking with someone on the phone or on FaceTime. Other times I am simply drinking wine and feeling, not reeling, feeling the process of inhabiting the mindful Dhamma aesthetics of, I'm not just being mindful of reaching for the glass of wine and looking at the color and sipping and feeling it. It's really the inhabiting, if you will, too, of the aesthetics of how you wish to move. Obviously, many of us observe life, people, places. We look for that kind of chemistry and symmetry. Oh, look at him, look at her, a child, a woman, an elderly person, and there's something in their way in which you imagine they inhabiting their aesthetics, their posture, their mind, that's very what? The same thing with Dhamma aesthetics and Dhamma literacy. It's not just being mindful or aware of thought, speech, and action. I know you know this, but how to empower your own style. The way we dress, the choice that day, the choice in the afternoon, the choice in the evening, the choice in the morning, how you choose to hold hands, how you choose to bathe, the aesthetics of how you wash your face, brush your teeth. The poetry of nuns and monks in monasteries is very, very beautiful. It's not often spoken about. The poetry of Dhamma aesthetics. And it adds a type of poetic dance, if you will, to the mundane mindfulness of the phenomenology or the overcoming of stress and anxiety. Learning style, learning to inhabit qualities of heart and art, add inspiration and purpose and meaning. I could only imagine some of the people in Dachau or Auschwitz did not let go of their spiritual aesthetics. Regardless of what was going down, I can only imagine that they kept alive the stature. I know the political prisoners, some of them in Burma that I've learned from, they kept alive their aesthetics, even within the filth and the torture of these horrible circumstances. So refined and committed were they in the artistry of their bhavana, their mind development and choice. Let me conclude with choice. Always at that primordial crossroad, spiritually, psychologically, existentially. Always faced with the existential conundrum of mortality. Always trying to enact and feel into the greater wonderment of the mystical experience. What is it that we're alive for? To be mindful, to be literate is one thing, but what will you write? What will you create? What will you engender upon the shared canvas of co-created space? Who will hear you a million, thousand, gazillion light years from now? That particular unique expression of your 5 minutes on the stage set of your own heightened experience. That was it. That was the peak of my life. And it's in the sediment belt. And someone inhabits that thought. What will it be? How do we co-create futures? How do we co-create freedom? The Buddha lived with his gang of friends and sisters and brothers and savants, and they led radical lives, radical behaviorists. And we're able to take from those teachings inhabited by men and women throughout time and in books, and take from them that which is true for us, and to bring them alive through our own Dhamma artistry, our own Dhamma literacy, our own bhavana, our own fidelity to thought, speech, and action. O Rahula, subdue evil by knowing the distinction between hate and love, right and wrong, goodness and bad. So, world Dharma literacy in an era of authoritarianism and mind control and information laundering. Hey, leave those kids alone. May you, wherever you are, may there be some value in this sharing. And may you remind me to remind you, to remind our friends and family, to keep high the radiance of our dignity, our artistry, our mindful spiritual intelligence, and go forth with ethical, spiritual, and political courage to turn back the ways in which totalitarianism and mind manipulation are being enacted upon the world today. we must be very vigilant in our shared expression of, I would call it, spiritual revolution. So from my heart to yours, I hope to see you tomorrow. God willing. Have a great day. Thank you.